Good morning, everybody. I am minutes away from my morning tutoring, and I got to thinking to myself, I think I need to talk about the benefits of reading aloud, not just the fact that I could be reading aloud to my students, but the fact that they are reading aloud to me. And so I wanted to talk to you about three key benefits to reading aloud with your students or your children. And I'm going to keep this short because, like I said, I'm actually just a few minutes away from meeting live with my students through their Google Meets. But let's talk about language development. And when you're reading aloud or your child is reading aloud to you, you are either sharing the text and they're listening to the language that you are reading in, whether it's English or another language, and you're exposing them to diverse vocabulary that they might encounter just like in everyday conversations, but they might hear words that they don't normally hear. So if I was going to read a book to them, maybe they've never heard some of these words. But not only that, but we can also be thinking about just understanding the flow of even a conversation from beginning, middle, and end. So it's pretty powerful. Whether you're doing the reading or you've got an older child who is reading to you, I really want you to consider this vocabulary development and then read a little bit and then stop and pick one word and say, what do you think this word means? And if you phrase it that way, you're okay. So here's the difference between what do you think this word means or saying, do you know what that word means? So sometimes I catch myself saying that. Do you know what that word means? And they'll say yes. And I'll be like, can you tell me what it means? So I should just go with, can you tell me what that means? And then I ask them to tell me what it means. And sometimes they can tell me. And if they can't, I'm like, can you use it in a sentence? And then if they still can't, then I'm like, okay, let's talk about that word. And then we'll take the different parts of the word, might write it out or highlight the word and look to see, is there a base word? Is there a prefix? Is there a suffix? Or if the student is just working on a decodable reader, maybe they literally can't even sound it out, then we will look specifically at the letters and the letter combinations and sound out the words. So I think it's really powerful as far as like vocabulary development and language development in general. You weren't born knowing English or whatever your language is. You weren't born knowing how to read. I mean, all these skills have to be taught. And it really truly comes down to a step-by-step process, but we can speed that process up by listening to stories. Okay. So whether it's you who's doing the reading or they're following along, I really like the Epic app for the readability as far as listening to stories, because they've got a lot of stories with that you can listen to, either an audio book or a picture book. So if you're just too busy, the Epic app is great. There's a lot of other ways to do it. Yesterday on, I don't remember if I did a YouTube or if I did a Facebook Live, but I was showing, this was maybe a couple of days ago, these little me books where they're they're not chapter books, they're picture books. And when they click on the little button, it will read the book to them. And then just listening to other people read books. There's lots of people who are reading books on YouTube that you can go and just look up the title of a book and somebody's reading the book. So again, listening to stories aloud and also listening to your children read to you is really important for language development. But not only is it going to do that, it is going to boost their cognition, okay, and their concentration. So I just happen to have on my bookshelf really close to me is a book that when I was teaching, a teacher was actually going to take off the shelf. And I was like, ooh, I'll take that book. And so I grabbed the book and I kept the book because I think it's so good. How Much is a Million by David M. Schwartz, pictures by Stephen Kellogg. Okay. Now this book to me is, a math topic type book, but it's still a great book. And then as the kids are reading the book or you're reading the book, you're not only talking about, a story in general, but you're also talking about math. Okay. And so we're building this concept of there's a language in another language because math is another language itself. And then they're starting to visualize just how big something is. And I love the pictures in the book. Let's see if I can find one that I really like. Where is the one with all the stars? I swore there was one in here with all kinds of stars in it. And of course, now I can't find it. But here it is. So visualizing how much is that really? And if you get up close, there's all those little dots on there. So I can't remember what that was saying. Something about 1,000,000 stars. I need a drink. Let me grab one here real quick. Okay. So we're building cognition as far as like understanding the world around us. We can do that through other types of books. I just grabbed 2 more books that were on my shelf. I've got, let's start with this one. Calendar Mysteries, The December Dog. And this was written by Ron Roy. Great series of books. Super, super fun for kids to read. These would be like, I would say, 3rd grade level book in lots of classrooms, 2nd and 3rd grade. And they are just set up so that the kids they're high interest books, in my opinion. So if you've got a 2nd or 3rd grader who's maybe not reading an actual picture book, they could be reading a short chapter book to you, and then, or you could be reading it with them. So you could read a page and they could read a page. And then you can, again, talk about the storyline and what's going on, and then relate it back to your own family experiences or things that you have seen in the real world. Okay. So we're talking about all of these really rich experiences that some kids don't get because people don't sit down to read with them. I'm sure you're doing a very good job at home, but if you're not, really think about that, because listening to stories is going to help develop that critical thinking and then those comprehension skills. So then you stop and you say, can you tell me what's happened in the story? Or you talk about some sort of a cause and effect situation. Okay, so maybe they got this new dog and the dog escapes, or somebody takes the dog. And then you talk about, well, what happened? Well, let's figure out why it happened. Or making predictions. That is something else that a lot of my students still really struggle with, is making solid predictions based off of what they've read in the story. So then I make them go back into the story. Well, can you support the reason that you're saying that you think that this is going to happen? Let's go find some evidence in the book that actually says that. And if it doesn't, it could be that they're using predictions based on things that have happened in their life, but we want to center it around the story. Okay, so I think that's really important. Then when you think about reading a little bit longer book, I love Judy Blume. She's just a classic author and she writes really great stories. If your family has not read Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, be ready to laugh. I mean, it's just so funny and so sweet. But we talk about creating emotional bonds and learning social skills. And books that are funny, that bring the family together, can really do that. And so taking time to foster this sense of closeness and security, knowing that you can talk about things that are happening in a book that maybe are happening to your child, and then having them develop this sense of empathy and understanding because they're being exposed to different perspectives, I think is really, really important. Now, what are some ways that you can do this and make it fun? Okay. And I don't know if you ever do this at your house or not, but when I was in the classroom, I tried to do this a lot. And sometimes when the situation arises with my students and we're working online, I'll do this. But have you tried to use different voices or different types of expressions to really spice your reading up a little bit? So you're thinking, you're reading the evil character in the story. Can you lower your voice, or can you change your facial expression, or can you lean in closer and whisper instead of, or yell, or whatever? Changing those things up are really going to help your child become immersed in the story. And then when they go to read it and they start to do it, that's the really powerful part, because then they're really immersed in their story. They know who's actually speaking during the story, and you've got them hooked when they can do that. I think that's great. So definitely try that one out. Have you considered having the kids act out that part of the story? Okay, now that's a little hard for me to do when I'm tutoring online, but it's definitely something that you could consider doing. Let's act that part of the story out. What happened during that part? Ooh, I want to be this character. I want to tell this part of the story. And so you don't have to act the whole part of the story. Let's act the part of the story where they found the puppy in the alley and how excited they were about that part in the story. And then you can use props and different things. Or make a puppet out of a paper bag and have them retell the story. I think those are such fun things for kids to do. And really, it could be of any age. Okay, so turn it into a small play, have them act it out, use little figures that you have, action figures at home where they can react those stories out. And I think that's really powerful. And then make sure that you're choosing diverse and age appropriate books. If we only read stories about one topic, we're really not broadening that scope of knowledge for our children. We might, okay, I live on a farm. We might love farm stories, but if we only ever tell them farm stories, they're not going to know about experiences in other parts of the world. And again, if we can't take our children and travel for long periods of time, then maybe we can travel through a book. I used to tell my kids that I loved to hear stories because it made me feel like I'd traveled and I'd had an experience, and then I can learn from the characters' experiences in the stories. So the key benefits, I think, are really very wide. And so when we're thinking about those bedtime rituals that you might have at your house, and it's like, well, go get a book, sit down, read the book. Um, think about that a little bit differently, and how can you turn that into more of an experience where your child can be really developing their language skills, really working on their vocabulary skills, really understanding the story. And that might just change your perspective on, oh, just go read a book. Okay, well, that's all that I have for you today. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. And as usual, keep the learning going. If you want to get in contact with me, make sure that you go to tutoringwithcheryl.tutorbird.com. And if you sign up and I call you, make sure that you answer the phone. You guys have a great day.